Time for the business news now. And Stephen Carroll is here. Morning to you, Stephen.
Hi, Hala.
We're going to start off here in France, where the Prime Minister is to meet unions to discuss controversial reforms to employment law.
That's right, it's shaping up to be a long battle for the French government. They've had to push back the publication of these plans by 2 weeks while they try to sort out some of that opposition coming not only from unions but also from within the ruling Socialist Party. Unions meeting with Prime Minister Manuel Valls today to express their dissatisfaction with the plans, which include measures which will allow struggling French companies to lay off employees. It's going to be a long and controversial battle, reminiscent of the last time the French government tried to make these sort of changes, as Fernand Van Tetz now explains.
Can France reform its labour laws? A proposed draft law aims to make it easier to hire and fire, but the reforms are facing a wave of opposition, particularly from unions. In a newspaper interview published this weekend, French Prime Minister Manuel Valls said, "We have to improve and complete this draft law, but what we cannot do is maintain the status quo." It's understood that the government is willing to budge on several aspects. They include the proposed ceiling on payouts to employees who are found to have been unfairly dismissed, which the current law caps at 15 months. Another point up for discussion, the threshold for declaring a company in financial trouble and thus allowing for layoffs. Reforms to France's 35-hour working week could also be scaled back. The question remains if flexibility on these issues will be seen as sufficient change. Many union leaders have warned that they disagree with the spirit of the law rather than the letter. A recent poll reported 70% of French are against the current plans, despite more than half agreeing reform was needed to create more jobs. An online petition against the reforms has gathered over 1 million signatures, a record for France, and students have planned to march on Wednesday. That brings back unhappy memories of the last time France tried to reform its labour laws a decade ago. Following nationwide public protests, that more moderate attempt was abandoned.
Well, we're turning to China next, where the National People's Congress is continuing to discuss economic issues.
That's right, we've been hearing from the finance minister a little earlier this Monday, giving details of the budget deficit for last year, which came in lower than expected at around 2.4% of GDP. Now, economists have cast doubt on this figure. They say that spending is set to rise as China continues its economic reforms. On Saturday, the Chinese premier set the country's growth target for this year as between 6.5% and 7%. There's also a continuing drive to crack down on certain areas of spending, as the finance minister explained.
We will strictly control or even cut 3 kinds of spending: buying vehicles for official use, government operational costs, and reception costs by public servants, so as to make sure that more money is spent on fundamental public services and the key areas.
How's all that affecting the market, Stephen?
We had seen Chinese shares get a boost earlier in trading. They were up a little bit, almost up by 1%, and that's kind of where they finished, as you can see, at the end of the trading day. They're up 0.8%. Tokyo, meanwhile, though, closing down almost 2/3 of 1%. Here in Europe, shares opening down at the start of the trading day. Some gains, though, in Frankfurt, though, for Commerzbank. That's after news that they're to replace their chief executives, although the rest of European shares, as you can see, they're opening in the red. Some more of the day's business headlines for you next. Eurozone finance ministers are meeting later to try to agree on reforms the Greek government needs to carry out for the next instalment of its bailout money. Officials from the IMF and the EU disagree over how much the Greek government has to cut to meet budget targets. The IMF says that without debt relief, Greece will need to do more to create a planned surplus by 2018. The finance director at French energy company EDF has resigned, apparently over the firm's plans to build a nuclear plant at Hinkley Point in the UK. Reports this weekend say Thomas Piquemal stepped down because he feared the project could jeopardise EDF's financial position. EDF has announced its interim replacement, but shares in the company have opened down by 5%. And the head of the British Chambers of Commerce has resigned after saying the UK could be better off if it left the European Union. John Longworth told the Chamber's annual conference last week that the UK's future could be brighter outside the EU. The organisation suspended him, saying his comments breached the group's neutral position on the referendum.
And finally, Stephen, a law graduate in the US is suing her school over her employment prospects.
Yeah, that's right. Anna Alaborda spent around $150,000 getting her law degree at Thomas Jefferson Law School. Now, she graduated in 2008 with good marks, passed the bar, but has yet to find a job as a full-time lawyer. Now, she's taking the college to court, saying that it inflated the employment data for its alumni and that she was misled when she signed up for the course. It's the first case of its kind in the US that's actually going to trial, but it's a really big issue for a lot of people that take out massive loans to pay for these law schools, and at least the argument in this case is they're not going to be able to get the jobs afterwards.
Oh goodness, well, certainly a case to follow, one of many law cases that are ongoing in the States. Thank you, Stephen Carroll with the business news.